Hello, I am Jacques Halbronn, and I would like to speak to you to lecture once more on French astrology, on what happens in France today, in fact, what are the new developments. Uh, I haven't spoken for quite a while, so I will develop two main points. One is an attempt to codify the work of any astrologer according to the same scheme and same pattern. Even if they are very different one from the other, they have to enter into the same pattern. The second point is what we call now astrolinguistics, which is a very interesting representation of what astrology might be in the next decades. So I will start with the new scheme which I have developed and which is not as a difference with what I will express later on in this lecture, which is able to help a presentation and a representation of the work of any astrologer. Well, theoretically, um, because some astrologers are not in a position to explain clearly on what basis they are working. But we are going to help them to clarify their own positions, so that it will show that the different form of astrologies will refer to the same pattern. So what is this pattern? There are a few main issues. One of the issues is where do you start? Where do you start your different systems of work? Where do you start your zodiac? Where do you start your houses? What use you make with the SFAX? So we know what are the usual answers, but we invite astrologers to develop in new lines, new formulas. So there are astrologers who use a starting point of their system, and this starting point may be two planets, one planet and a fixed star, a planet with the equinoxes, spring equinoxes, zero Aries, etc. So we ask from all our members, all the participants to our different forms of meetings, to explain what is their starting point, and also how they justify more or less this sort of starting point. Are they conscious that some starting points seem more relevant than others? For some astrologers, it's not even necessary to use any planet for a starting point. For instance, tropicalists who start the zodiac at zero Aries, there is no star, no planet, nothing, just the equinox of spring equinox in the northern hemisphere. Good. The siderealists will start the zodiac with a certain star of the constellation of Aries. It's supposed to be among the first stars of the constellation So here you have a star, a certain star, which will start. But in fact, this certain star is referred implicitly to the equinox of spring in a certain way. Still more, a little more concrete than just a point, a vernal point. And we have other attitudes, other processes. You can, for instance, decide that you are going to combine two planets, and this conjunction will be the process, the starting process, commencing process. For instance, the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune every 36 years might be a cycle. So in that case, you don't refer to the zodiac at all. You don't need it. You refer to the aspects, because the aspects will divide the cycle in a certain number of divisions. Square, semi-square, trine, square, etc. No? Okay. So the division of this system is not anymore a division in 12. It is a division based on the aspects. Aspects from the conjunction to the opposition, and then afterwards the reverse from the opposition to the conjunction, which makes quite a lot of them. Okay, my system, for instance, is something else. My system is a conjunction of Saturn with one of the four rodal fixed stars. And I divide this cycle in four, connected with the conjunction of the Saturn with the four fixed stars, as I said. And every period of 7 years is divided in two. Period 1, period 2. Okay. But we're not going to anticipate to the second question. So the second question is, how do you divide precisely? How do you divide your system? In how many sectors? You know, there is a discussion between dividing in 8, in 4, in 12. So this is a point. You may agree about the starting point, but not about the division. As a matter of fact, I just forgot to tell you about another point. I return to the first chapter about houses. Houses also needs also a starting point, and in general, it is the ascendant, the rising sign, the degree of the rising sign, which are forced to build the 12 houses on an equal basis or not. This is another story. This is the story of the second chapter. Okay. But I propose to start the process of the 12 houses not from the rising sign, but from the descendant, because it is at the time of the descendant that you start to see the planets and the stars in the sky. It's not when the sun rises. So I believe it makes sense to start from the fall of the day and not from the rising of the sun. Okay. So I pass to the second chapter. Second chapter, as I said, is a division of the planets, of these systems, houses, zodiac, etc. How many divisions? The usual answer today is 12. We divide in 12. But there are also possibilities of dividing in 4 and in 8. There is probability that division in 8 was very important in the antiquity, and that it has been adjusted and modified to correspond to the 12. So everyone will have to answer about that. How do you divide? How many sections do you divide your cycle, the system? Maybe it's not so important. It depends what importance you give to these different divisions. If it's just an indication that there is a progression of the cycle of the system, well, some astrologers give great importance to that. Some astrologers will give less. For instance, in mundane astrology, Barbo will, of course, divide his cycle according to the aspects, but of course, it's not that clear cut, of course. So, as I said myself, I divide in eight. Then Rudyard was also dividing in certain cases in 8. The 8 in his cycle of lunation is dividing in 8 possibilities. And these 8 possibilities actually are not connected with, they do not depend directly from the birth time. The birth chart is included within one of the 8 sectors. So this is another story. And by the way, I forgot, excuse me once more, I forgot to mention the cases in chapter 1 of astrologers who start everything from the birth time, from the birth chart. And they give a great importance to the return of Saturn to its natal position. They give also a great deal of importance to the solar return. Any sort of return refers to not to any star or planet, but to the time of birth, which is also a solution. Let's pass to the 3rd chapter, if you don't mind, if you allow me. The 3rd chapter is about what signification you give to these sectors. What is the content of these sectors? And here also there is quite a great deal of possibilities of answers. Okay? For example, for the houses, what meaning you give to the houses? Will you give the traditional meaning? Will you give different meanings, different interpretation of these houses? What meanings you give to the division in 12? Will you privilege the 4 elements, the rulerships, or will you base yourself on the symbolism of the zodiac, etc.? And of course, if you opt for a division in 8, you will have a lesser number of possibilities. It also depends, of course, if you use a new planet, a planet beyond Saturn or not. You will have different association with the signs. If you work according to Ptolemy, the tetrabiblos, you will not use Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So they will be excluded from your system, and you will not have these values connected with the gods of the Trans-Saturnian in your hand. But this is what I wanted to show you. I suggest that everyone will try to situate his own work, in this, according to these different schemes, the different chapters. Now I pass to the idea of astrolinguistics. I don't remember if I already mentioned that in English. Of course, in French I did, but in English I don't remember. And I will be rather brief because I might have probably to return to this later, sooner or later. The idea is, and this is an answer to the first chapter of this, the idea is about the signification of the divisions, to base yourself on linguistics. To use linguistics to nourish your division. And I divide only in two cases, but I must underline the fact that in the case of division of the cycle of Saturn, I have 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. You don't, it's not because you have 8 possibilities that you have 8 different significations. You can have 8 possibilities, and finally I have only 2 ways of treating them, which is, according to me, rather wise. So I say that, and this is connected more or less to what you call in English rational philosophy of Bertrand Russell, of Wittgenstein, etc. Theory of language, theoretical. Anyway, so in France we are less accustomed to that, but in England apparently you are. But I'm not sure that the English astrologers are much concerned with this work on philosophy and language. But this is exactly what I think. So philosophy is based on language, and language is based on astrology, which is more or less the main idea about astrolinguistics. Which means that we don't use the same words according to the periods we're passing. That is the main thesis. When we are in a period which is connected with the idea of conjunction, we use words which begin with the prefix co or con or com, see? Like conjunction, which means communion, complicity, everything which would gather people. And the other way is disjunction. We call it disjunction. 45 degrees after the conjunction, you have a disjunction within the system of 90 degrees, more or less. And the disjunction is represented by words beginning by dis, by d, departure, dysfunction, disaster, etc. Now this is a very simple point, you see. So you will only use, you will only focus on words which start with con, like in conjunction, or if it is another time, with words which start with d or dis, they, when it is a disjunction. And the idea is that language was influenced by astrology. That if mankind lives according to this rhythm, it is normal the language has registered this rhythm, and that it has been structured according to this rhythm. So we believe that my school, my line, believes that people would change their own language. The consensus about language will change, will evolve when you pass from a period of conjunction between two stars, two factors, to a period where you are far from the conjunction. Which you can, for instance, I just give you an example. You can use my theories for your own work. For instance, you can say that the conjunction is connected with the cardinal signs, and the middle of the season is the middle of fixed signs. So you will see that fixed signs, middle of fixed signs, correspond to the start of the second period, etc. Anyway, the idea is we don't speak in the same way according to the astrological configuration that we are crossing. Okay. So that was my intervention for today. We are on the 2nd of September 2014.